trauma affects memory and your health. Hello, everyone. My name is Coach Kendra, and I am here with the gorgeous Dr. Jane Mims. And we are going to talk about memory today and how there's actually 4 different types of memory. I've never really looked at it that way.
Yeah, there are several different types. Your brain is very simple but complex at the same time, is what I like to say. So yeah, there are different types of memory. And trauma does impact them.
Yeah, and it not only impacts the brain, but it impacts the body and the nervous system as well. So, but thinking about how it affects our memory can be a little bit confusing. So we're going to go over the 4 different types of memory today and talk about that.
Interesting. Kendra, I'd like to know, what's the earliest age that you can remember specifically?
It's a great question. It's probably for me about 4 years old.
Yeah.
Because I remember a specific event. My father passed away when I was 5, but before he passed away, I remember him sitting at the table with his friends. We had company over, and I was little, and I had a caterpillar in my hand, and I came in from outside, and he was drinking a cup of coffee, and I went over and wanted him to see my little caterpillar, and he wasn't paying attention to me, and the caterpillar accidentally dropped in his coffee, and I didn't dare to tell him, and I ran back outside. Now, he passed away when I was 5, so I had to have been either that summer of when I was 5 or the summer before, which I was 4. So
yeah, I have a really hard time remembering things prior to 5, some 6. But the reason I ask is we have a foster child who's still in her single digit ages. She's 9 now, but she was born into homelessness, poverty, obviously, if she's homeless, emotional abuse, neglect. And her memories, she has vivid memories back to just when she was 18 months old, 2 years old. She can describe things in detail, tell you what people were wearing, the weather, the smells, things like that. And so it's really fascinating to me knowing that she was in trauma and that was just her normal, and how her memory has attached themselves to things. And trauma either does that, it builds up memory, or it completely blocks it out. There was chronic verbal abuse in my home, and that's why we believe my memory has blocked tons out from my childhood, 7, 6, and before.
I know for me too, there are certain things that because of trauma, I don't choose to remember, or that I have forgotten. And every once in a while something will come up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that. I haven't thought about that. And
well, your conscious mind has put it out, but nothing's ever really forgotten from your subconscious mind, because your memories start to form when you're still in utero, when you're about 3 months into your formation.
It's amazing.
In your mother's womb. Yeah.
I would like to
how generational energy is passed along, because you already start to pick that up. And that's really why it's so important and difficult at the same time to break generational patterns.
Right. Exactly. 100%. Yeah. So there are actually 4 different types of memory. We have semantic memory, and that is the memory of general facts. So if I use like a vehicle as an example, we know what a car is or a truck. So it's just general things that you remember.
Or your bank passcode.
Yeah, just things that you general knowledge or facts. Episodic memory is a memory of an experience or an event, and usually you remember the who, what, where about that particular event.
So your caterpillar.
Right. See, I remember who, what, where. It was in at the kitchen table. Interesting. Procedural memory is the memory of something that you do on a regular basis that you don't have to think about, like driving a car. Mm-hmm. We hop in our cars. We don't think about the fact that we put it in gear, we press the gas, we press the brake. We just automatically. Have you ever driven somewhere and you get there and you're like, how did I? Wow. Yeah. I don't really. I hate to say it, but I've done that.
I used to drive to a city about 2.5 a 2.5 hour car ride away, and it's pretty much just a straight freeway shot. And I remember a few times getting there thinking, gee, that went really fast. Well, it didn't go any faster than the other time. It's just my brain was somewhere else.
Somewhere else. And your procedural memory remembered where to go, where to turn, all that.
Interestingly enough, with that, I moved away from my childhood home when I was 10 years old. I grew up in a small town in Mississippi, and we moved to Arkansas. And in college, so, years later, was driving to go spring break or something at the beach. And my roommate and I were riding in the car together, and we were passing by the town I grew up in. And I said, whoa, I haven't been through here. We didn't have any family there. There was no reason to go back to that town.
Right.
And I literally hadn't been there in, I think it had been, 8 or 9 years, and never driven there. I was 10. So I never piloted a vehicle there, drove a car there. And I said, I'd really love to know I'd really love to see my old house, but I don't remember how to get there. And I'm old. This was before we didn't have the GPS things all over the car or whatever, the Garmin. So, but my roommate, her name was Janet, and we're dear friends still, but she said, I bet you when we get to where we need to turn off that you'll realize it. And my conscious memory had no idea where we were, but something in my subconscious was like, I think we're supposed to get off the freeway here. And then I think we should turn here. And I did take one wrong turn that ended up coming out somewhere. It was through a neighborhood. But then we dumped out, and I was like, oh my God, it's right there. And I didn't live in a neighborhood. We lived on several acres. There was a horse farm next to us. So it wasn't like I can be like, oh, 1, 2, 3 streets. No, it was not the easiest place to find. But all of a sudden the car just dumped out, and I was home.
Yeah. It's amazing what your brain remembers, and what you, in your subconscious, just guided you right to that spot. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So you do still have those memories. They just aren't in your active working memory because you don't need them.
Yeah. Yeah. The fourth type of memory is emotional memory. So this is more of, so let's say you get into a car accident at the corner down the street, and every time you go by through that corner, you get an emotional feeling, and your body remembers what happened because of that accident. So those are the 4 different types of memory. And so let's talk about how trauma actually affects the brain, is related to these types of memory. So trauma can literally prevent information from getting to that part of the brain. So that's why a lot of times people can't remember specifics about certain things, because when you're in a traumatic event, sometimes it prevents the prefrontal cortex from doing its job, and prevents you from remembering those things.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a traumatic event. Yes, traumatic experiences, but remember, trauma is the way that you react to things, and not something that happens to you, as we've clarified that before. But also it could be any event with high emotion. So think of something that's very, very happy. Maybe the birth of your first child, maybe a wedding day, and you won't remember all the specifics of these things. It's why I've heard new moms say, I know that it hurt, that the birthing pains were there, but I don't even have really memory of those specific things. Okay, well, the pain is traumatic, yes, but the joy of this other wonderful thing is, it makes that memory pale in comparison. Or, a wedding day or a big celebration, you won't remember every single person who was there. I've heard people say, oh, well, I'm going to go to the funeral to show support, but I know that he or she won't even remember that I was there. So that's a sad high emotion, happy high emotion. And so there's only certain things that we're going to be able to pull back up from those because of that prefrontal cortex disconnect or protection.
Yeah, so interesting to me how that all works. With the episodic memory, trauma can shut down the memory and fragment the details into pieces so that you don't put it all together. And related to the hippocampus in the brain. So it's just so interesting to me
It's a protection.
that all works. Yeah.
That's a protection function of your brain. So it's a disconnected jigsaw puzzle. So
Yeah.
you do have all the pieces and you can put them together. And a lot of time, and a lot of the times, I mean, especially why people come to you, Kendra, is to help them put those pieces together so that they can reason through their trauma and then overcome it. But this function of your brain is really meant to protect you. And what it's protecting you from is re-experiencing that pain.
Right. Yeah, so interesting. The emotional memory is triggered by the amygdala. And what's funny is when you're looking at, I don't know if any of you have ever taken a look at what is inside or pictures of what's inside our brain. The amygdala is really, really small.
It's tiny. But it
It's
does
tiny.
so much. It's like
It's,
Napoleon.
oh gosh. You know, and what the amygdala does is, let's say you don't even have to be, like I used the example a few minutes ago of getting in a car accident at the corner and you happen to drive by that corner, you, or you could see a picture of something, but it's basically, it's a trigger. So it triggers, the change in your memory. So do you have a
Yeah.
better way of explaining that?
Actually, something that just came to mind when you were talking about that is the foster child that we've had, the 9-year-old, and she was having a wonderful day, and she has really, really awesome days and really, really difficult ones, or challenging. And she and my biological daughter were playing, and there's a 3.5, almost 4-year separation between ages there. And my biological daughter is really a sweetheart. She's tenderhearted and likes to have fun, but soft and gentle. She's the ballerina. And they were just playing, and she does, she will like to pick on her little sister from time to time, but just in that, fun loving big sister kind of a way. And one day they were playing in our sunroom, which is right next to our family room. And I was in the family room. They're open to each other, but kind of separate areas in our home. And they were playing, and my biological daughter kind of just reached over to tickle the little one. And the little one, there was a trigger there. And we don't know everything that happened in her past. We just know that it was highly traumatic. But the tickle triggered something, and Claire, the younger one, physically attacked my biological child and then took off running.
Wow.
I went into a session with her very, very quickly while that energy was up, and we tied it to a specific event that happened when she was 2 years old in her mind. But it was so similar. Her the events actually, on the surface, if I would explain the two events to you, you'd be like, what do those have to do with each other? But the way her brain processed the trauma connects it to having a good time with a brief momentary threat coming in. So you can be having a good time, and then somebody reaches over to tickle you, and you just like punch them in the throat or the belly, or I think she elbowed her and stomped on her foot and ran away, something like that. But the need to attack and then save yourself. And so we unlocked that. So we've disconnected that behavior. She's not connecting those things again. We can play with her without fear that she's going to, maybe punch us in the throat at any moment. But that is the way that all of our brains work. So you really do need to work with someone who knows how to get in there and unlock it so that you can make sense of it, because your subconscious mind knows black and white. It doesn't know reasonable, unreasonable, good, bad. It just knows truth or untruth. And anything that it remembers as God's honest truth.
Yeah.
And
the cool part is that it can be, you can fix it or put it back together, or rearrange it, which is really the interesting part. And luckily enough, Claire at that age is able, with the help of yourself, do that, because if she did not have that and she was growing up, she would take all of that into her adulthood and into her life and try to function with all of that being
I mean, I'm working with 30, 40, 50-year-olds right now on the same things that I'm working with this 9-year-old on. So, I mean, people are taking them into their adult life and they are sabotaging them. So the earlier that you can unlock these things, the more successful the rest of your days will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Procedural memory, the brain can make the procedural memory such that, so basically disrupts the patterns of what you're learning. So we said procedural memory is something that you remember automatically, like driving a car. But you can also, if you're in that car and you're near the corner that you just got the accident, you may tense your body up, or you may forget certain things about how to drive that car at that particular moment when you're triggered with that particular memory. But memory also affects, as we talked about earlier, your whole body, your whole nervous system, how you stand. So you can look at somebody's physical body, how they stand or how they sit, or if they're telling you a story, a lot of times you can tell how they're feeling by how they're hunching over, by how they're pulling away, those types of things. So memories of certain
couples, sometimes couples seek me out. I don't really seek them out, but sometimes couples seek me out. But when I'm working with couples, and I make sure to always do it on video, sometimes I'll stop one person when they're speaking and ask the other person how old they feel right now, because you can just see them.
Yes, the whole body. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so a lot of times, if you're in a trauma, if you're experiencing some trauma, it can disrupt your procedural memory of how you're learning something or what you thought you knew, and have your body will do some totally different things of how it was actually feeling that day. I guess that's
Have you ever, I mean, you're so knowledgeable about so many topics. Have you ever been talking about something and then you just lose a word and you're like, what would,
yes.
I know this word, but what is this word?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's an example. And I think that that's happened to everyone from time to time, or sometimes I'll just say the wrong word that starts with the right letter. And then I'm like, I meant please. Why did I say pansy? Like, I don't know. Like, what?
Wait a minute. I always talk about that, or
Right.
I know this stuff, and I think we can relate to that, and because we've said that to ourselves before. So,
Yeah,
but it is really, really interesting to me. And here's the really interesting part for me, is that a lot of the information that we're learning about our bodies and nervous system and brain when it comes to trauma and memory and all that stuff is some of it is newer stuff that they've learned in the past 10, 15 years.
yeah.
So they're always uncovering new things, and particularly when it comes to the brain and trauma. So stay tuned for.
Yeah, we
further.
call it medical practice because you have to keep practicing until you know you're done. And I mean, we're never done.
Right. There's still, I mean, there's so much we don't know about all of this stuff as well. So, so what are you better at, long-term memory or short-term memory? Like, what are you? Okay. My partner literally has very little short-term memory. He has great long-term memory. He can recall movie titles, jokes,
It's like my husband.
he can recall names of people that he's spoken with once back 20 years ago, what they said. It's amazing. I'm
My
more
husband can tell you like who played the best on the 11th hole of Augusta in 1991 and why. Oh, and what weird golf pants were they wearing?
that sounds like, yeah, that sounds like David as well. But it's interesting to me because I take my good short-term memory for granted, and he'll forget certain things, and I'll be like, he couldn't have forgotten that. And so we'd had that discussion about short-term and long-term memory, and or he can recall things that I would never be able to recall. I barely remember things 20, 30 years ago. I
You've had a
remember
lot
them.
of trauma in your life though. And so you're like, you probably block a lot of that out. Short-term memory, you actually can bolster that up. It's a muscle. So just like you can build up your biceps by doing bicep curls. So you can increase your memory and improve your memory. You just have to work on it. And one thing that I would say to people who who want to improve their memory but believe that they don't have a very good memory, stop saying I can't remember people's names, or I can't remember this, or I'm terrible at
Right.
that. Because when you say like an I am or an I am not statement, I can't, something like that, you're just taking it on as an affirmation. So if you
Yeah.
don't want that to be your truth, if it's not something that you like about yourself, stop saying it.
Right. 100%. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've actually learned about a year ago. I mean, I don't think people realize that they say these things to themselves.
They're on autopilot, which is why self-talk and affirmations are so dangerous, because we're doing them all the time anyway. And when people say, oh, I don't really know if affirmations work, I'm like, oh, I'm watching your life. Trust me, they work. Because, you're saying all these things that you're terrible at, and you certainly are. You're absolutely right. You are terrible at remembering people's names. What was your name again? So.
Yeah. Stop saying that. Stop.
Right. Stop. And start feeding yourself positive affirmations every day. Force feed your brain information. If you hear things over and over again, it's why you know the alphabet.
Right.
What comes after O?
Yeah. Or your colors or any of that stuff.
It's repetition, 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 repetition.
Really.
Repetition.
Be good to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully you have found this video useful and you understand more about the different types of memories that you have. Understanding more about the types of memories that you have can help you unlock different areas, and they can also help you overcome things such as, I always go to that street corner and then I tense up. It can help you start to recognize those things. So keep a journal with you. You don't have to write long prose, just little things that you noticed. I would recommend you to keep a mindfulness journal every day. So at the end of the day, just write down a few things that you noticed about yourself or about your environment, even if it was a bird that was on top of a fence post. Just start noticing things about your life, and then how your memory works with each other and plays with each other and what impacts it, because that's the first key in knowing how to improve your memory and your life.
Absolutely. And if this video has been useful to you, hit the thumbs up and
the subscribe button.
Yes, the subscribe button. And the little bell, so that you know when our next video is coming up, because you won't want to miss it.
Absolutely. We're helping you live a happier life with lower stress and more success. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye.